Hi, this is Tenny-Brittian, and I am your instructor for spiritual development. This is week 5. This is a course with Phillips Theological Seminary's ministry training program. I got that out of my mouth without stumbling too much this week. Well, I'm really glad to get to be here again this week, and I have to tell you, I'll start by saying this. I'm realizing that the color and the screen is not what it usually is. If you were to look at one of the previous videos, my guess is that it looks a little brighter, a little more distinct than this week's video does, and that's because it is 9:23 in the evening and the lighting here is ghastly. And why, you might ask, is it 9:23? Well, it's been a long day, and I tell you that only, of course, to make an excuse about the color. Let's just put that aside. The reason I tell you that, though, is to say that our days are busy, and as we keep finding out, as we continue to try to develop a spiritual habit, right, that can be really hard, and we fit it in as we can and as we need to, because our lives are so very full. I just want to recognize that again. It doesn't mean that we're failures. It doesn't mean that we're procrastinators. It doesn't mean anything except that we're very possibly very, very busy people. Now, not to say we may be procrastinators or whatever it is, but just to recognize that this is the nature of our lives, and if indeed that is the case for you as well, don't beat yourself up about it. Well, here we are. As I say, we're in week 5. You've got the syllabus. You know what's ahead of us. We'll give you the heads up just in case you haven't checked. We're talking about the third stage of 5, stage 3 of James Fowler's 5 stages of faith. You know, last week we started looking at as well stages of what is being called faith, but really is about, it's about stages of spirituality, of spiritual depth, of spiritual development, right? There are stages of spiritual development. There's some correlation with those and Fowler's stages of faith. We're going to pick up a little more on that as well. You know, last week, one of the questions, and I'm flipping over here to see if I can find it quickly, one of the questions, and it was our content question, was about the difference between faith and spirituality, and faith, spirituality, and religion. We had some fun with that. I want us to pick back up on that a little bit this week. I want to share, though, and I'll be putting this last paragraph onto our discussion form, but I wanted to share this with you. This is in a book I found by a man who goes by the name of Timber Hawkeye, Timber, T-I-M-B-E-R, Hawkeye, and this is the back from his book, Faithfully Religionless. Faithfully Religionless. It says, discover the difference between feelings and emotions, the disparity between truths and facts, and the countless benefits of mindful living. When his pursuit of happiness in corporate America felt counterproductive, Timber Hawkeye escaped his fluorescent-lit cubicle in Seattle and set out to fully embrace the stress-free lifestyle of Hawaii. Nice, huh? Intrigued and curious about what people believe and why they believe what they do, he questions everything he ever thought was true and discovers the beauty of letting go. Now, if you consider yourself spiritual but not religious, then you're going to love this inspirational book. And if you want to lead a simple and uncomplicated life with happiness at your fingertips, then you'll want to read this page-turner more than once. Timber Hawkeye says, it's not that I'm against religion, I simply don't have one, nor do I believe that we need it to be ethical. My faith is doctrine-free, with a definition of God that doesn't conjure a white man in the sky who dispenses blessings for good behavior and harsh judgments to condemn the bad. That's because I don't believe God does that. Religion does. You see, faith is a spiritual practice of continually letting go of certainty, of ego, and of the underlying need to know, while religion is a ceremonial tradition of hanging on, clinging to concrete dogmas, stubborn rigidity, and ageless rituals. I find it interesting the way he juxtaposes religion and faith, and then talks about rituals in the end. We don't have time, of course, to go through Timber's book or even pieces of that. I point that out, and as I said, I'm going to pull up a copy over to our discussion forum, this last paragraph. I do want to point out his last word is rituals, ritual, R-I-T-U-A-L, and he talks about rituals, ageless rituals, and puts that into religion and says that religion is a ceremonial tradition of hanging on and clinging to, here it is, ageless rituals. I want to counter that and get us to think, or give you some couple words to think about. One of them is ritual, but rite is the other part of that. Ritual, R-I-T-U-A-L, rite, R-I-T-E. And what I would argue, where I differ here with Timber, is to say that a rite is what we find in religion. That religion holds on to a lot of these rites, and these are the right ways to do things. Communion can be a rite. You have to say the magical communion words. Baptism can be a rite, a profession of faith, or rites of passages, if you will. So rites are done very specifically. We have these books of worship, these books of rites that tell us, pardon me, you can tell that it's 9 something in the evening. I apologize for that yawn. But we have these rites that these books, as I was saying, they give us the right words to say. These rites can become ritual or ritualistic, if you will, when we bring our own traditions into them. I love baby dedications. And again, I've got books that tell us how to do a baby dedication or how to do a baptism. But when we begin to add our own spins to it, or the community comes together with all of that, my favorite way of doing a baby dedication comes out of being able to plan one for a minister couple who wanted their denominational person, their judicatory minister, to dedicate their baby, and a way to bring in the congregation with that, knowing that that baby would not grow up in that particular congregation the way someone else's baby might, and so it became very much a ritual, and a ritual is such that I've worked with now other parents, and becomes something of whatever it is we make of it, and comes together, and depends on the people who are gathered there in the worship service for that particular rite. It's how the rite becomes a ritual. And I spent a lot of time talking to my one of my spiritual companions along the way. What came to me as we were talking this one day is that we get the rite, the R-I-T-E, which ends in that E, that ego, that piece, that me kind of a place. And ritual has the U-A-L, and takes me back to my southern pieces and the y'all. I love that word y'all, that brings together more than one you. And so in a ritual is a rite that brings in y'all, that brings in others, right? It takes it and makes it more than what often and usually a rite allows it to be. So as you're reading Timber's piece, just kind of hold that in tension, or juxtapose ritual and rite in there. And again, I'm going to ask that question about religion and faith and spirituality, and see where we run with that this week. So some things to think about. Oh, let me get you to thinking about your final paper. Here's what your final paper will be. Again, I'll have that up on the boards for you. Your final paper will be a 5 to 10 page paper. Can't be done in less than 5. It needs to be constrained to 10. Can come in anywhere within that, whatever you need. I want you to select somebody in your congregation. Don't tell them that you're doing this. I don't want to know their name. And you are to identify what stage of faith they're in. So using James Fowler's piece, are they in stage 1, 2, 3, or 4, because what I want you to do then is write a prescription that will help them move from 1, 2, 3, 4 to a stage 5. So they may have a lot of stages to move through. Fowler talks about the dynamics, the pieces that help them to move from one stage to the other. I want you, though, to incorporate these spiritual practices, these practices that you've been practicing, or perhaps they're practices you haven't been practicing, but that you think would really fit that person that you are writing the prescription for. So those are going to come out of the high voltage spirituality, from the people who can't sit still, maybe some other practices that you've used. I want them to be informed by these stages of spiritual development as well. So you may have somebody who's in stage 1 or a 2. You can get them moving into stage 3. You may move ahead if you want to get started on this early, because you want to get them from 3 to 4 and from 4 to 5. So do you have that paper? No less than 5 through 10, up to 10 pages. I want you to write a prescription for someone in your congregation, in the congregation where you serve or you worship, or you're there hopefully to worship. Help them to move from whatever stage they are in into a stage 5. Use spiritual practices, some of which you've used or perhaps you haven't used, as found in high voltage spirituality, prayer for people who can't sit still, keeping in mind as well those faith development stages and that movement as well. I want you to have some fun with it. These are going to fulfill some of our objectives. One is being able to identify where people are in their spiritual development, and also helping them to grow in that. All right, it's going to be another great week. I look forward to seeing you on our discussion forums. Take care. See you there. Bye-bye.